OP-05 is right around the corner for the English release, and I thought to do an in-depth guide on one of the decks that I played heavily in the OP-05 format, which is Purple Luffy. Now I already have a video on the channel talking about Purple Luffy, but this I'm going to go through the list that I used during the championship event in Singapore for the round 2 championship event, and certain card choices that do matter in this deck and the different matchups. Gonna talk a little bit about dealing with Sakazuki, dealing with Enel, and some of the other high tier decks in the format, as well as some of the card choices that goes into this deck. Now, if you have the purple pieces from ST04, which is the Kaido starter deck, you would already have a lot of this deck built. So if you're not looking to like break the bank with like OP-05, you can just pick up a few of the super rares from OP-05, which is UST Skate predominantly, and then like put it together with some of the cards that you already have. And if you have SD10, the 7-cost UST Skate, and the 4-cost Tragal Law will come in handy in this deck. So we're gonna go through the deck in more detail, in depth. This is probably gonna be a long one, but if you want to play Purple Luffy, then this video is for you. Alright, so of course I didn't have this playmat back then, but I did get this playmat from Riley TCGs. If you want to bling out your entire setup while playing, go check Riley TCG out. Link will be in the description below, as well as the code Asyrafchazz20, which you can use to get 20% off. Just a minor shout out. I already did a sponsorship video for Riley TCG, but I just wanted to share this playmat, this amazing playmat with y'all, Gear 5 Luffy. But starting with the leader first, which is the Purple Luffy himself. And this leader is really great. If you don't know the ability, it's on your turn, you can essentially take a life and then ramp by 1. And it's an active Dawn, which really does come in handy. So this gets you to like your 7 Dawn, 9 Dawn turn really fast. And that's the main reason why you're playing this deck. I'm gonna put the leader at the side. So as usual, my choice of Dawns. This time is the SD10 Ultimate Starter Deck Dawns because I love the foil. But with the Gear 5 Luffy sleeves, baby. Let's go. Now, first, I'm going to start with the 2k counters of the deck, starting with Miss Double Finger Zala. So this is a new card from OP-05, and the ability is essentially on play, you may trash 1 card from your hand, then add up to 1 Dawn from your Dawn deck and vest it. So it's another form of ramp. There's also the ability of trigger, Dawn -1, play this card. So if you, for some reason, aren't naturally ramping with your leader, you can potentially use this to ramp if you need that extra Dawn in the following turn. If you somehow missed a ramp and then you want to get up to the 9 Dawn for Kaido, then this is a way to do it. Also a decent body on the field, but most of the time I'm using it strictly as a 2k counter. So my other 2k counter slot is, there's a little bit of a split. So I'm playing 2 copies of Franos Suuk. This is a new card from OP-05 as well. So it's 5 cost, 4000 power. But with Dawn 1, if you have 8 or more Dawn cards on your field, this character gains Rush. In the situations that you need an additional attacker, you can rely on Franos Suuk to kind of be an additional attacker that has Rush, and then have some other units. So in certain situations, this would be really good. You gotta see it play by play, whether you need that extra attacker that has Rush or not. If not, you can just use it as a 2k counter. And the other two is actually X-Drake from OP-01. Been a while since you saw this guy, but first of all, 2k counter, and you have the ability of Dawn -1, your opponent discards a card. So if you need to thin a certain player's hand, let's say you're playing against an Enel, and they're down to like that 1 or 2 cards in the hand, actually playing X-Drake out to kind of get rid of 1 card from the hand would be really good. And you can most of the time get a counter out of the hand, which makes attacking a little bit easier. So use these 2 cards as a case-by-case basis. They are useful in certain scenarios, which is why playing a split, you can run like 3-in-1, or you can run the full Franos Suuk, full X-Drake if you want to. The other 2k slot in this deck also goes hand in hand with another card. It is the Alti from ST04. This is the Alti that pairs really well with page 1. So Alti has an ability of Dawn on play Dawn -1. You can play a 4-cost page 1 card from your hand, and it is the 4-cost 6000 power vanilla. So if you already have SD4 and you have a full play sets of these 2, put them in your deck. So first of all, Alti is a 2k counter, so that's very useful. But if you can Mulligan for page 1 as well, and you can play them both on a turn. It'll be especially good against decks like Sakazuki, who most of the time would want to get rid of, would have resources to get rid of one major threat. But right now, in the later versions of the Sakazuki list, they're playing a lot more of the Rob Lucci version, which would really hurt if they can get rid of these two in one turn. But they are good against combating the the Om and Holy combo that NL sometimes plays, or presenting a board against more aggressive decks. So these two sets of cards are really really good in that regard, and you should always try to mulligan for these like combo pieces against opposing Purple Luffy decks, so you can kind of go wide, start chipping at their life, and they have to deal with them, and then you can still drop down your major threat. So in addition to one 4-cost 6000 vanilla, I am playing 2 copies of Poo. If you're going first and then on your 3-down turn, you can use Luffy's ability to ramp yourself up to 4, and then you can play this. It's still a really powerful card to play on your second turn. By ramping up by 1, you go to 4, and then you go to 6, you ramp again to 7, case by case basis. So this is really good. I am playing another vanilla as well. This is the Urashi? Yeah, 7-cost 9000 power vanilla from OP-01. Just as an additional body on the field, you can swap this out with more copies of a Poo. I like a good split just in case, like, if I don't have my UST Skate, or I'm just wanting to play something big on the board that my opponent has to deal with, then this is the card that I will definitely have in my hand. Other than that, it's a good body on the field, or you can just use it as a 1k counter, so that's fine. Now this next set of cards is metagame dependent. So I'm talking about 4-cost Uta from the film starter deck. So 4-cost Uta from the film starter deck, or the 4-cost Trafalgar Law from ST10. So let's talk about Uta first. So Uta is included to kind of counter decks like Zoro, because obviously this deck, Luffy, will get to a really low life count very very early on, because you're inherently taking life to ramp up. So to combat like the more aggressive decks out there, Uta is here to kind of prevent them from other attackers from going through. You can block, and then you can Dom -1 to rest it. So if your metagame has a lot of Zoros, have a lot of like red green law, a lot of more aggressive cards or aggressive decks or aggressive leaders, then you can consider playing the full 4 of Uta. If not, if your metagame is more NL heavy or more Sakazuki heavy, or cards or decks that would require to have more cards in hand, maybe if Whitebeard is still around, then you can potentially just play the full playset of Trafalgar Law, because Dawn -1, if your opponent has 7 or more cards in hand, they discard 2, which is really really good at attacking the hand directly, and this is one way to go about it. So I am running a 2-2 split of Uta and Trafalgar Law. I'm going to move them down here because they got caught in the glare. And it is metagame dependent. I didn't know what I was going to face, so I did a 2-2 split. But more often than not, I like Mulligan or tried to look for Uta and for Zoro decks, and like for like Sakazuki decks that like to keep cards in hand, then I would try to Mulligan for Trafalgar Law. Now, the next the next set of 2 cards are also very metagame dependent, and they are your 5-cost characters. So you have 5-cost Magellan and 5-cost Polly. So let's talk about Magellan first, of course. Now, Magellan is fantastic in combating against yellow decks in general. So Katakuri decks and NL decks. If you can buy yourself a turn with Magellan, then that is really good. You can really set them behind, and what's even better than 1 is playing 2 in a row, and that's gonna really really hurt them in the long run, because their dawns will be messed up and they can't get to their 10-cost mom, or like for NL for the 9-cost Yamato really really quickly, and Magellan's really good at doing that. Also, against opposing mirror decks, this might be one of the cards that you're actually going to hard mulligan for, because if you can throw them off their ramp, then yeah, Luffy also suffers from the same problem, because Luffy wants to get to 9 really really fast. Magellan is a way for you to slow that down. But if you are facing more aggressive decks in your metagame, then consider playing more polys instead. So poly is on play, you pay 2 Dawn, add up to 1 Dawn from your Dawn deck and set it as active. So it's an inherent ramp on your 7 Dawn turn, which you can get really fast with Purple Luffy. And then if you have 8 or more Dawn's cards on your field, so if you go from 7 to 8, you can KO one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. This is exceptionally good against Zoro decks as well as Red-Green Law decks, and Poly actually helped me win one of my games with Red-Green Law. Back-to-back Polys are really powerful in that matchup specifically, and you can also use it to get rid of, you know, opposing Rebecca's or Rob Lucci's in general. Yeah, but you do need to get to your 7 on turn to utilize this effectively, but like I said, these set of cards right here, they are heavily metagame dependent. So, you know, you can swap them out if you want to, depending on how your metagame is. At a bigger tournament where decks are more varied, you may want to do what I did and present like a 2-2 split. Or if you feel like you will face more Enel, you face more Katakuri, then you can favor Magellan a little bit more, you can favor Trafalgar Law a little bit more. But if you feel like there's more aggressive decks, then you can kind of invert the ratios a little bit. So that's just my tip on these set of cards right here. But they do have utility. They are really useful against the varied metagame. So there you go. Now the next set of cards, I would say I would consider as a pure core strategy of this deck specifically, starting with the 5-cost UST Skate Super Rare from OP-05. This card just makes things really efficient for you if you can play like 2 of them in a row. So for example, like you want to set this up as early as you can, and then like whatever Dawn minus effects, so Magellan, like Alti, even like Queen that's coming up, you can essentially be very resourceful with your Dawns. So you can play this Dawn -1 and you can get an active Dawn back. Sometimes you want to keep that active Dawn active for some of the events that we're going to talk about later, or you can use it to attach to a leader and attack. So UST Skate, I would consider this a pure core card in this deck. Never run less than a full play set, and it's a blocker. It's going to be useful in, you know, preventing your opponents from going for game by, you know, clogging up the board with this 5-cost blocker. Speaking of 5-cost blockers, you have the 5-cost Queen from ST-04. So like I said, if you have the ST-04 deck, then you are pretty much good to go if you have the full play sets of these cards. So Queen is something that is really useful in Purple Luffy, because Purple Luffy does not have any searchers, as you can see. So it really, but you will get to see a lot of cards because of Luffy's ability alone. But you do want to kind of cycle through the cards. So if you feel like, let's say certain cards are not good in your hand, like let's say you don't want to use a Magellan, you can use Queen to filter it out by drawing 2 and discarding the Magellan card. And it works really great with UST Skate because you get the Dawn back as well. You want to prioritize Queen to look for the cards that you want for that particular matchup, and like don't mind like playing a lot of Queens in a row, just so you can look for the particular card that you want. Now the great thing, and what I've learned against Sakazuki, like this is like the early Sakazuki build, is that either whether you're going to first or second, I think you would want to go second, I believe, so that you can go and play a, on your 4 Dawn turn, you can ramp 1 and play Magellan. Back-to-back Magellans against Sakazuki is really good. But if you hit the 10 Dawn turn, you may even want to play 1 UST Skate or 1 Queen, or double UST Skate or double Queen. Essentially, you're playing 2 5-cost cards on the same turn, so it's kind of difficult for your opponent, like for Sakazuki, to get rid of them. This presents a much wider board and a little bit more pressure on Sakazuki. So if you have, against Sakazuki, you got to be mindful, like they definitely have means to get rid of your stuff easily. So if you can kind of plug up the board with multiple big stated creatures like this, or stated characters like this, or your 5-cost Poly or 5-cost Magellan, then it's really good. Magellan would be like the best one, Queen and UST Skate would be like the second one, and then Poly, depending against Sakazuki, you may have some targets, definitely, but you will prioritize this for more aggressive decks. Now my choice of my boss monsters, there's 2 in this deck. The first one being the super rare UST Skate. Now UST Skate definitely is one of my favorite boss monsters from the recent metagames like ST10. So if you don't know, this is on play, and when attacking, Don -1, give your leader plus 1000 power until the start of your next turn. So it essentially is you can make your own Whitebeard with this card, and you can get to 7 Dons really easily. And the great thing about this is that it presents like a really powerful threat on its own. And if you have the 5-cost user skid, anytime you Don minus something, you can get it back and then attach it to your leader and swing for 7. So Don management is very important when you have kids on the field. So against like Zoro decks, you may want to prioritize playing this over like a 9-cost Kaido, just to kind of make it easier for you to counter out of attacks with the additional 1000 power inbuilt into your leader. So it's like you're getting a 1k counter already prepared for you. So that's something to kind of think about as well. And if you always then the reason why I'm running 4 is that if you get this clogged up in your hand, you can play Queen to kind of replace it with cards that you need. We're going to put the core card right over here. And then lastly, the ultimate boss monster of this deck, which is kind of my favorite, which is kind of weird that Luffy is playing it. It's 9-cost Kaido, just an absolute beast of a card. Don -5, KO something that costs 6 or less, and then this card gains Rush. So you are essentially just going ham, ramping like crazy up to 9, and then dropping this bad boy and swinging face. There are so many targets in the current meta game for Kaido to hit, so you got no worries. Or you can KO like opposing queens, opposing UST kids, opposing Magellans if you want to. But essentially this will be your final boss that you want to kind of push through. And against the mirror for Purple Luffy, you may want to prioritize holding back your Kaido so that you can play down your Kaido after your opponent Kaidos you. A lot of the games that I've lost against the mirror is because I played my Kaido first and then like try to go for game or anything, or like attack into my opponent, and then he kind of countered out of it. Then he played his Kaido and then swung into me for game. So you gotta kind of weigh it out when you want to play the Kaido. But against the varied metagame like Enel and also like Sakazuki, it is, if you have it, just play it and then let them deal with it. Sakazuki, some Sakazuki lists run like the 10-cost Kaido that lets you bounce like an 8-cost and a 3-cost. I believe it's the secret, or is it? No, sorry, the super rare from OP-04, I believe. And yeah, that one really hurts because you're already Don -5 with Kaido, so it's gonna be hard for you to get the Don back. And if they bounce it, you're gonna be in a bad shape. But if the decks don't tech for it, then this is a really good card to just go for game and swing to your opponents with. So these two are your boss monsters, the 7-cost UST Skate, as well as the 9-cost Kaido. Right here, not sure why it's not focusing. I'm gonna finish off the list with 2 events that I play during the tournament. The first one being my good old trusty Blast Breath or Borrow Breath. Now, Blast Breath is very good because you are naturally aiming to get like 9-cost Kaido out, and if you have 10 Dons on the field, you can 9-cost Kaido and still keep up 1 Don as active for Borrow Breath for protection. Alternatively, if you already have a UST Skate on the field and then you play out your 9-cost Kaido on your 9 Don turn, you can get one of them back as active and hold it up for Blast Breath. So I really like Blast Breath in this list. I'm running 3 of this, and my last 2 cards is actually 2 events, which is the Gomu Gomu no Jet Gatling, the 0-cost event card that lets you plus 3000 power by discarding a card. This is a counter. And sometimes you see like 9-cost Kaido and 7-cost UST Skate have 0 counter to them. And sometimes they do gum up your hand a little bit. This is a great way to get rid of them and have some inbuilt protection for your leader as well. The trigger ability also lets you ramp. So it's kind of perfect. And I'm running 2 of these. These cards have saved me a lot against certain decks out there. And I wouldn't change the number. I mean, like for me, I wouldn't change, but you can always experiment with it. One of the flex event cards that people have been trying out in Purple Luffy to combat Sakazuki like Rob Lucci or Borsellino blockers out there is actually Sheep's Horn. It's a 2-cost event card from OP-01 that lets you Don -1, vest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 6 or less. So this is really good to kind of rest the Borsalino blocker in particular, or maybe even a Sabo blocker that has its effect procted, because you're not KOing them, you are just resting them, and then you can go for game with your other attackers. So keep in mind for Sheep's Horn as well. I've not personally tried it myself, but I do see a few lists playing this particular event card. It's a really good sleeper hit, and if people are not expecting it, then you can play it out. You can really catch them by surprise. So keep that in mind. And there you go. This is my full list of Purple Luffy for OP-05. I love this deck a lot, and even though in OP-06 it's kind of fallen off a little bit, but in OP-05 I still think that it's one of the better decks in the format. Probably not as good as Sakazuki, but it can still hold its own. If you drop 9 cost Kaido before your opponent can deal with it, it's still going to be a really powerful card on its own right. And Purple Luffy is really powerful. There's a reason why it was so popular in the early days of OP-05. Yes, it may have fallen off a little bit in OP-06, but I still think that this is a reputable deck that will always see play. As long as you got the pieces for it, you should try it out. Before I end the video, I'm going to give you some tips on how to play Luffy. So essentially, I would always favor going first, no matter what the deck is. If I'm feeling like, okay, I really want to disrupt this NO player's hand, or the Dawns, or I really want to, you know, make sure like I do really good against Sakazuki, then, you know, there are chances like maybe against Enel, maybe against Sakazuki, that you would want to go second, so that on your 4 Dawn turn, you can use your leader's ability to ramp yourself to 5 and then play down a Magellan. So that's the only like situations where I would choose to go second. If not, I want to go first. The key cards that I want to look for is, first of all, the Alti page 1 combo. Secondly is either page 1 on their own or the 4 cost 6000 vanilla Apu, so that you can have a 4 cost 6000 character on the field on your second turn. That is really good. And then on the next turn, you'll be up to 6 Dawn, you take another life, ramp up by 1, and then you play down UST Skate. The next turn, you can play down Kaido. So that's kind of your sequencing for the Purple Luffy. But of course, depending on the matchup, depending on the metagame, depending on the opponent as well, you will want to change your choices according to that. Against Enel and Sakazuki, you will want to favor Magellan. Against more aggressive decks, Polly, or even like Uta. And then against the Mirror, whoever drops down Magellan or these set of cards first usually would be very favored in the early game, and then hold back your Kaido until you are ready to use him as a finisher. So I hope you guys enjoyed the little run through of the deck itself. Yeah, make sure you mulligan for the pieces that you need depending on the matchup. Of course, you know, something like a deck that you don't know, just, you know, 9 cost Kaido against Nami, you kind of have to play the Nami game and, you know, just swing tall and make sure they use all the events, and then sometimes they have it, sometimes you will have it, so that's good as well. Anyway, this is the stock list. Feel free to make changes. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Enjoy OP-05, and if you have any questions about this deck and matchups in particular, just hit me up on Twitter or X at Asyrafchazz, DM me or tweet at me. I will try my best to answer the questions either in the video comments or on Twitter itself. And yeah, I love Purple Luffy. I think it's a really great deck. One of my favorite leaders from OP-05. I finally picked up the alternate art as well. So there you go. This is your guide to Purple Luffy. Hope you guys enjoy and take care. See you guys in the next one. Peace.